Hello and welcome to It's All Kicking Off, another football roundtable discussion podcast with myself, Adam Wilbourn, and Andrew Pollard from WhatCulture Football, here to discuss another burning football issue. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Football, wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily football podcasts. But Andrew, we are here to talk about the, let's just say, changing fortunes of the likes of RB Leipzig, Manchester City, and Paris Saint Germain. It's been quite the decade or so for these sides.
Oh, it's been insane. Just in some preparation for this, because there is some prep now and again. It's crazy. It's a crazy concept, I know, but just to see from where they come from, especially Leipzig, that literally we're looking at 2009 was they were created. They've been in existence for 11 seasons. It's absolutely insane. And obviously Manchester City, at least with Manchester City, you can see this is a club that was formed in 1880, I think. So there is some history there. Leipzig created from scratch. Paris Saint Germain, just some rich fellas in the 70s, the late 60s, thought, yeah, Paris is a good place to have a big football team. Let's crack on and see what happened. And then obviously they had their big investment in 2011, I think it was, from Qatar. So yeah, if you're a fan of these clubs, then I guess it's a brilliant roller coaster to be on. Apart from maybe Red Bull Leipzig, because there wasn't really fans in the first place, because it was a club that was fabricated from the remains of another club. But yeah, it's fun to watch.
Yeah, the catalyst for all this was a great tweet that I think Simon Stone sent out recently, talking about how 10 or 12 years ago, City were getting battered by Middlesbrough on the final day, as we all remember. I think it was an 8-1 defeat. PSG were finishing lower mid-table at best in Liga, and Red Bull Leipzig didn't exist. Let's start, in fact, with Red Bull Leipzig. And just for those who are unaware, explain the, amazing rise of them, but also the huge controversy around them as well.
Yeah, well, I think from what I can tell, the nuggets for the idea of Red Bull Leipzig came around in 2006. A chap called Dietrich Meisterschitz, which I'm totally butchering, I'm sure, who was basically Mr. Red Bull. And it was just like, yeah, we want to make a football team. Why not? By this point, they'd already had Red Bull Salzburgs in place. I think that was 2005 they were formed. The plans were in place for New York Red Bulls. There was a team in Brazil that there is now, and obviously there's countless other teams across the world right now. And it was more a case of, it's a team that splits opinion, Red Bull Leipzig, because as we saw in the Champions League game against Atletico Madrid, they're a fantastic team to watch, and they've been like that for the last couple of years, and they do so much so the right way. It's a squad, a setup that's geared around young, vibrant footballers, and with the emphasis on developing these footballers and then selling them on for a profit, as we've seen with Timo Werner. If normally in any other sort of situation, if that was your club, you'd be made up. I mean, Red Bull Leipzig fans will be made up, but it's the fact that how it was all constructed, and it was just a case of, let's just create this club. Let's make our own club. Let's throw a load of money at it, and let's just try and dominate it. And then, obviously, clearly, the name, there is the whole marketing spin where people just originally saw this as a marketing ploy for Red Bull, the energy drink, and essentially see all of these clubs that I just mentioned as just it's just branding tools, as marketing tools, as a way to promote that product. I try to think of the name of the team that they. There it is. That's my microphone falling over. SSV Markranstadt, which is another name I'm probably butchering, but that was the team that became Red Bull Leipzig. That the footballing license for that side was picked up by Red Bull. They changed the name, they changed the kit, the colours, everything, and the journey kind of begun. They had pretty instant success. The first season in the fifth tier of German football, they came top with 80 odd points. I think it was, or 80 points. I think it was 22 points ahead of second place. From there, they had I think it was 3 years to get out of the fourth tier. I think it might have been, they got through the second and the third, 2 years in Bundesliga 2, and then here they are. The other insane bit is this is only their fourth year in the Bundesliga. 4 years, 4 seasons in the top division of German football, and here they are in the semi-final of the Champions League with people loving them and people hating them. It's such a unique club to see, because you can see why people love to watch him, but you can also see why a lot of the more traditional German clubs and German fans have nothing but disdain for Red Bull Leipzig.
Yeah, I'm trying to draw comparisons between English sides. The only things I can think of is like when they were trying to call Hull City Tigers, or when
Yeah,
Cardiff went all reds because of the
horrendous.
owner, or the most blindingly obvious one, just in terms of outrage amongst fans, is of course Wimbledon becoming MK Dons.
Yeah. The MK Dons example is, like you said, that's the perfect example, just without the success that's followed Red Bull. And I guess as well, if you're looking at Wimbledon, just in broad sense of the area, there's a lot more bigger teams in very relatively close vicinity as well for players to be attracted to. And Wimbledon didn't have the financial backing of a Red Bull per se. But yeah, it's the sort of thing you'd want for your club in a way, but you feel a little bit dirty about having it. But yeah, MK Dons is a great example, and it was you can't help but have a smile when you see that AFC Wimbledon maybe go above MK Dons, or they play each other, and AFC Wimbledon get the win after AC Wimbledon have to rise from the ashes, literally the Phoenix Club, as it were, to work their way back up the football pyramid into league football, surpassing mine and your teams on the way. But yeah, that's MK Dons is probably the prime example in terms of English football, just without anywhere near that sort of success then.
Very quickly, before we get onto the other sides that we're going to talk about today, you mentioned RB Leipzig, 4 seasons in the Bundesliga, Champions League semi-final. Success is obviously the end goal, but how long do you see this project going on for? Because there's always the case of when owners kind of not get disillusioned, but just sort of lose interest. Is that a possibility? Because that's the danger, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess normally that comes either if there's been a sustained time of no success, or if they've hit that, they've reached that peak, and they've won the big trophies, and then after a few years, it's just like, all right, well, we've just won another Bundesliga. That's a big deal. Yeah, let's go and find something else to spend our money on. And so maybe there is that. I don't think there is that right now. I think that the test with that will be of if and when Leipzig do win the Bundesliga, whether it's next season, whether it's in 3 seasons, 4 seasons. I mean, if you're looking at their history, their really annoyingly, frustratingly short history, then they're kind of on track to be winning the Bundesliga at some point soon, just in terms of like numbers. But obviously, you've got Bayern Munich and you've got Borussia Dortmund that will have a lot to say on that. And it's going to take a lot to topple Dortmund, topple Bayern and to topple Dortmund. But I think Leipzig, I think the owners there will be content, very content with the foreseeable. And it's also really good to see how they can get by with they bring in these young players and then they sell them on, and they still kind of maintain their overall goal. They still achieve success. So it's, I mean, someone like Naby Keita leaving, that was a nothing. Timo Werner's gone, and they've gone and got through to the Champions League semi-final, albeit in a one-off game against Atletico Madrid. So there's a model there, and you have to be impressed with it. And it's very sustainable. It's just a case of, I mean, how far can you go with this is my thing of, can you just get by on this model alone to get you to the promised land of being a better side over a season of football than Bayern Munich? That's a tough ask.
I suppose the blueprint, obviously, for this seems to be Manchester City. We talked about their before money success, or the early days when they were still getting battered by Borough on the final day. It is. It's not your archetypal rags to riches story, but it is an incredible change. I was watching the documentaries and footage you've got of them in playoff finals and playing the likes of Gillingham and Paul Dickoff, Sean Goater. We all remember those days. My friend, who's been a Manchester City fan since the mid-90s, who always has to bat away criticisms of glory supporter, are you? It's like, no, when all the kids in my school obviously supported Manchester United in the late 90s, he was sat there talking about Man City. It's been a roller coaster for fans of theirs, but an incredible past decade.
Yeah, it's your mate sounds like one of those poor fellas who everybody else is going about Eric Cantona, and he's trying to big up Uwe Rosler or something like that. No discredit to Uwe Rosler, but yeah, anytime any club gets this massive amount of investment, there's always going to be like, oh, that's it, they've gone and bought the success. Because of course you are. If you've got that much money, you're going to go out in the realms of financial fair play and buy the best players you can to improve your squad to achieve your goals. There's always that jealousy, that bitterness, and there's also that element to it of like, yeah, it is maybe a little bit unfair that someone could just go in and throw so much money at something, whereas another team who you'd be dying for that. But with Manchester City, like you kind of touched on there, it's a bit different because, like I said, they were created in 1880. They're a team that have been around for a long time. They're a mainstay of top division English football, and then they fell through the trapdoor into what is now a Championship, down into what is now League One, playing Wrexham, my boys. So yeah, it's to see them come back up from that to it. It is. It's admirable to see that they got themselves back to the Premier League and they got themselves to be relatively competitive. And also, there was that fun kind of season or two where there was that like transition of like, we've got a bit of money now, but we haven't really got like the stupid money, but we're going to buy people like Alano and Martin
Yes,
Petrov.
that's the name I was immediately thinking of.
Yeah, he was great for them at that point in time. He was a perfect signing for them for what they needed. But then when they go out a couple of years later and buy like a Yaya Toure, it's like, yeah, okay, different levels there. But yeah, there was that year or two of like, right, we're going to buy really good players who are better than what we've got, but they're not the top world class players that necessarily might win us leagues. But it's a stepping stone, and I guess that's the Mark Hughes years.
I was going to say, yeah, well, we were talking about this before we started recording about that surreal time when Mark Hughes was managing Manchester City, and you could literally see Roberto Mancini sat behind him in the stands going, look after it for me because I'll be in a few days time. Yeah.
It's like I'm not one to. I don't like to use the word literally because I think it's getting thrown around. But it was like that was literally he's there, Mancini in the stands. And a funny side story of that, because Mark Hughes from Wrexham, is that he got fired on the Saturday after the game, and then the Sunday was in a local pub in Moorabbin, which is a small town in Wrexham, and he just walked in, and everybody was like, "Oh, Sparky, Mark Hughes," because that's where he's from. He's the hometown. Everybody's talking to him, buying him rounds of beer. Came to his round, like, "Oh, you're around, Mark," and he's just like, "Piss off, lads," and off he went out the pub with his however many, millions of severance. That's a story that does around these parts, but I believe it is true. But yeah, it was a strange time, but there was a lot of cynicism and critical thought there of, it's a bit harsh on Mark Hughes that, but you look at in the cold hard light of day, then the Mancini move was the right move to make with Manchester City, and it paid dividends. When the big investment came in, what was it? I think it was officially through in September 2008 from the Abu Dhabi United Group, which is the group that's still in place now. And they brought in, they kind of paid for Robinho before they'd officially been given control of the club. That was that mad deadline day, last minute, and Robinho was doing the press conference talking about how he can't wait to play for Chelsea. And it's like, wrong team, mate, wrong team. But we'll let that slide. But they'd already brought in company, 6 million. They brought in Zabaleta, Craig Bellamy, Wayne Bridge. Again, I'm talking about these players that were kind of that stepping stone. I love Craig Bellamy, but he wasn't quite Sergio Aguero, for example. But then it was that summer of 2009 when that was their first summer with the full firepower force behind them, and they go out and they buy Carlos Tevez. I think it's 25 million on Emmanuel Adebayor, which was at the time he was one of the best strikers in the country. It's Julian Lescott from Everton, Rocky Santa Cruz, the handsome bastard. I know, what a player, what a man, what a specimen. Polo Torre came in, which kind of played a part in Yaya Toure turning up 18 months later, I think it was. Gareth Barry, Patrick Vieira, who a lot of people forget about on a free transfer. So it was that 2009 summer was when it was like, yeah, we're taking this seriously now. And then they got rid of like Tel Ben Haim and Didi Hamann and Darius Vassell. So it's like there's, again, levels. But from 2009 onwards, it was
those few summers were just bonkers, weren't they? Stilian Petrov, I seem to remember who's going there.
Yeah, Martin Petrov.
Martin Petrov, sorry. I always get those confused. Martin Petrov went there. And it was, I do remember playing Football Manager and just having fun with that, but also fantasy football, just not knowing who was going to start or who was even going to end up at their club. And yeah, that weird transition where they like you say, sort of went up in levels. And then, of course, Mario Balotelli, Aguero, the classic final day result against QPR, that mad game. And now look at them. They are arguably one of the favourites to win the Champions League. And I'm intrigued to see what happens if they do win that, like you say, in 5-10 years' time, as to, all right, well, what else do you want to still achieve? Obviously, you probably want to achieve more doubles, possibly even a treble. But
yeah,
I don't know. Man City fans aren't going to ever be complaining about winning trophies. But I don't know what the end goal here is. Maybe just to establish City to be, as they have become, a regular top four side, who can compete with the likes of Liverpool and Man United. And the question and the argument of, well, you bought all that success. I think also we need to probably mention that Man United didn't just sort of stumble upon the success that they had. Obviously, they had an incredible developmental system in the class of '92 and what have you. But they nowadays, I don't think United fans can really chuck that accusation around. Obviously, Chelsea have done it as well in the past. Let's talk about PSG though and how they became a European powerhouse. Because as I mentioned in that tweet, they were finishing, I think it was 13th in Liga about 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, it was 13th in the 2009-10 season. The year before that was 16th. And I think the year after was, I think that might have been, I don't know. But they had this weird, because they had their brief flutter in the 90s, in the mid-90s, which was the last time they got to a Champions League semi-final. I think it was the 94-95 season, or might be 95-96. But they won the league in 94-95, and that was a Patrice Loco, David Ginola side that many still revere to this day. But yeah, after that, it kind of went off a cliff for a little bit with Paris Saint Germain. That was when Lyon took over as a dominant force in French football. A Lyon team had Juninho just scoring free kicks from wherever he wanted to score from. It was so much fun to see. He was, Paris Saint Germain. It really was that investment completely saved their arse. Really, when you just look at the positions they finished in the league, because there was 2011 which was the first year after the investment. Before that, it had been 13th, 16th, 15th, and then you come to 2011, bit of money's thrown at them, 4th. The year after that, 2nd. And then the year after that, they've won 7 out of 8 Ligue 1 titles. So it's like, it's money talks, and that is the prime example of it. Again, levels of the players. Before, there was a Jeremy Clement who was okay, but that wasn't great. We're talking at 2009, 2010. There was a Mamadou Sakho when he was a genuine prospect, and then he came to the Premier League and. Less about that. Crystal Palace fans and Liverpool fans will back me up on that one. And then he had a pre-Sunderland Stefan Sessegnon in midfield. But this is, again, a decade ago. But you see that then the investment comes in 2011 and it completely changed it. And you've got the actual ruler of Qatar is the owner. The ruler of Qatar. It's like Psycho Sid, the master and the ruler of the world. It's obviously through the Qatar Sports Investments Group, QSI. But yeah, it's backed by one of the richest. I mean, all of these clubs are backed by rich people, in particular Manchester City and Paris Saint-Germain. But Paris Saint-Germain has got pretty much they're obviously the richest club in France and backed by one of the richest people on the planet and just one of the most dominant forces in world football. But with them, they've got the other side of this is like, okay, I can see why you'd invest so much money in a club in Paris when it's an easy one to turn around. If you've got a load of money, you look at what big cities, what continental attractive cities are out there that we could draw players to. Paris is clearly an obvious standout. But then the reality is the league, once you start dominating it with Paris Saint-Germain, the league is not competitive. We've seen Monaco have their moments and then they couldn't cope financially and everybody got sold off. They had that fire sale where Falcao went, Bakayoko went, and Mbappe had to go. We've seen Marseille kind of resurgence at times. We saw Lille, but all their best players went, Johan Cabaye, Eden Hazard. So and Lyon, of course, are kind of getting back to where they were. But that's the thing. Lyon look great, but they just cannot compete with Paris Saint-Germain. And so you've got this... It's essentially a one-horse race every season. So how far can you take this club? It's all about European glory, I think, with Paris Saint-Germain, because the league's almost redundant. That's just a given.
Is this unquestionably PSG's best chance ever to win the Champions League, would you say?
Yeah, I think you have to look at it like that, really. Probably... if you're a Paris Saint-Germain fan, you probably want to play Red Bull Leipzig more than you want to play Atletico Madrid. So that's done you a favour from last night. I think Red Bull, we've seen, they weren't afraid to have a go at Atletico Madrid from the get-go. And you're Paris Saint-Germain, you're thinking like, okay, they want to play like that. We've got just as much firepower. It's probably twice as much firepower going forward ourselves, even if Mario Icardi cannot be asked to run. We've still got Neymar. We'll have a fully fit Mbappe by then. So yeah, you think if you're Paris Saint-Germain, you're looking at that and you're thinking you should be nailed on for the final. But me personally, even though we've talked about the not so positive things about them, I'd love to see Red Bull Leipzig just do a number on Paris Saint Germain.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be whoever makes it through out of that. It's going to be a fascinating final because it's, it could well be two sides who've never won the Champions League in the final, depending on how results go for Lyon, Man City, and of course they're going to play the winner of Barcelona, Bayern Munich. I want to talk about Barcelona in a second, but before that, we talked and have talked obviously quite a lot recently about Newcastle's takeover and how that fell through, and the insane amounts of investment that was being speculated regarding that. Do you think any other sides could emulate Manchester City's success and see that sort of investment?
I really don't know. When you mention we might talk about this on the pod, it's like, how do you even start with this? Because it's like you literally just sat at home with some Scrooge McDuck levels of cash, thinking, I want to buy a football club. Where do I go with this? I mean, one that jumps out straight away was Wolves because I love the setup they've got there. I love the way they play football. Just everything about Wolves is that they're one of those teams that become everybody's like second or third favorite team to watch. Them and Sheffield United, probably, if we're talking Premier League football. But it all depends how much the people behind Wolves are willing to invest. But if you're talking about purely from I want to go out and buy a football club, I want to do a Manchester City, I want to do a Paris Saint Germain. Yeah, I think Newcastle was a great shout for that club, just because if you're looking in England or in the Premier League, you're looking at somewhere where it's a big city with a passionate fan base, ideally already plugged into place. And I mean, they don't get much of a passionate Newcastle fans, and it's just it's such a shame that one didn't happen because everything was there, the setup was there. The stadium was there. The only thing that wasn't there is the squad. And if you're coming in with a massive wedge of cash, you can do that. But in terms of who else could do that, who else could emulate City, it's a tough one because you look at London, you've got Spurs and Arsenal there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, would anybody want to come in and invest heavily in a London club? When Spurs and Arsenal and Chelsea are obviously clearly the daddies of that territory. We've seen it before. With Telly Fernandez coming in and investing a shed load of money in QPR, and that backfired spectacularly. But you could probably put that down to mismanagement and bad signings, though, I think. Let's get a 34-year-old Rio Ferdinand who can't run. Rio Ferdinand, one of the best defenders of his generation, undoubtedly, but not at that point in time he wasn't. So, yeah, it's tricky. I think you go regional. We've seen, we saw Cardiff get investment. That hasn't really that's been up and down, successful or not successful. Yeah, you're thinking what are the if you're a prospective buyer, you're looking at what cities are going to be what are going to work for you commercially, and also what locations a player's going to want and come for, rather than just come for a massive load of cash, which they'll undoubtedly get as well. I mean, have you got anybody in mind that you think could be a great kind of rags to riches story?
Well, I'm going to say
Chesterfield.
Yeah. I was going to say Chesterfield or Wrexham, probably.
Yeah, I agree with that, mate.
Either or. No, I think you're right. I think when Newcastle's name was mentioned, you did think, well, that's only one of few viable places. Like I've lived in many places around England. I'm from Derbyshire, Chesterfield, but obviously I know Sheffield very well, and I think that's a place that has got another rabid fan base for both sides there, and Leeds, of course. I'm just mentioning United and Wednesday when I'm talking about Sheffield there, but you've got Leeds in Yorkshire, of course. The West Midlands, Villa, Birmingham, West Brom, Wolves, the Coventry, the list goes on and on there. But I think you ask Newcastle fans and you ask, casual fans just in the northeast, unless they're Sunderland fans or Middlesbrough fans. But anyway, they would love to see that sort of investment. But it's really odd. I think the other element of this is the fact that, not to dismiss it as much, but when Chelsea and City came through, yes, you already had sides who were established who were competing for Champions League spots. But like you said, if you chuck a few $100 million at, you're probably guaranteed to get in the Champions League. Now, I don't think it's that simple. If you established a new side, let's just call them Premier League side A that you invest in, you have got to go up against Liverpool, City, Man United, Chelsea, Tottenham, Arsenal coming back into it. You've got all the other clubs that we've talked about, Sheffield United, Wolves, Burnley, these clubs going on these insane runs. Everton, should be doing far better than they've done in previous seasons. The list goes on and on and on when it goes to that. And I think if you're just saying, well, we're going to throw money at this problem and hopefully get in the Champions League in 3 seasons. I don't think it's that straightforward.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. You've got to know how to handle it. And to be fair to Leipzig, they did that really well with Rob Rangnick. And now, obviously, just the way things have gone with Leipzig, they seem to have. That's the annoying bit. I keep going back to it. Is they've set about things in really the right way. Apart from the very fact of let's just throw money at it and start a club and take over another club and change our identity. But everything since then has been so well. And now with Nagelsmann, they're getting that reward. But I think, yeah, you need a good structure from top to bottom. You need people who you can trust with that money. And it's not a quick fix. We saw with Manchester City, we talked about Mark Hughes. And while Mark Hughes, he got them up to, I think it was 8th the year before he got fired in December. The season before that, he finished 8th. And I mean, 8th's not bad, but it's going to be a couple of years. It's a process. We saw with Claudio Ranieri at Chelsea before Jose came in. Ranieri got them to, I think, 2nd. And it was he again, it was that process, that fun process of seeing like what players they were getting. And then Jose comes in and just was like, right, I'm just going to spend a massive load of money now. We're going to bring in whoever. I'm going to bring in all my lads from Portugal who I know are really, really good and I could trust. And yeah, whichever club it is that gets this next massive way. If it was say for example it was Newcastle, that deal went through, then realistically I think you'd have to look at 2 years at least, maybe 3 years before you can seriously be in contention to do anything of note in terms of pushing for a title, because it's going to be trial and error to an extent. You might have to go through some managers, and you've also got to see if maybe that owner loses interest. Tony Fernandez with QPR, we saw that he went and threw loads of money at it at first, and then when he realized it wasn't working, it was like, well, I don't really want to spend more money on this because Mike Ashley spending no money whatsoever on Newcastle. But yeah, it's not just a case of Everton you mentioned there. That's an example. Mashiri's come in, loosen the purse strings a little bit there. There's a bit more money than Everton have historically been used to, and yet you look at some of the signings that have been made, and it's Everton since restart have looked absolutely horrendous. A lot of my mates that are Everton fans have just been completely bashing them, and rightly so. They just look disinterested. They look not up to the job, and there's a lot of work to do still in this team. But they've spent a lot of money to get to a team that's not great. 60 million on Gylfi Sigurdsson. I know that was before Mashiri, but I love Gylfi. But these days the dude ain't cutting it. So yeah, it's just there's so many elements to take into account with any sort of takeover.
Finally, we talked about a lot of the Champions League teams here, of course. Not really worth mentioning the likes of Lyon and Bayern Munich. They've got their own stories that I've no doubt we'll cover another day. But I'm intrigued to know your thoughts on the future of Barcelona. I don't think they're going to fall off a cliff when Lionel Messi leaves or retires or whatever comes first. But what does the future hold for them? Because they're in kind of a flux at the moment.
Yeah, it is. It's a strange one with Barca. Well, it's not a strange one. It's a natural one. It seems like the end of a cycle for a team. We've seen it so many times over the years. I think, to me, you look at it, has it been managed well? I don't think it's been managed that well. The fact that, we won La Liga last year, the year before. So there's no problems there. We don't need to worry about anything whatsoever. And then now they come second, and all of a sudden it's like everybody's losing their mind. It's an aging squad. There's no doubting around that. I mean, it's a strange season for them, because you look at someone like Arturo Vidal, who ended up playing, I think it's 38 games in all competitions, whereas he was somebody they've been trying to offload for most of the season at 33 years of age, but he's had to step in and play. Frankie de Jong's had some injuries, has looked good in starts, but it's an aging team, and then they had someone like Arthur that came through and looked really good, as promising in the midfield. I think he's 24 now, but he's off to Juventus next month, September. That's already agreed for 60-odd million. But it's a tricky one for Barca. I think if they're not careful, I don't know how they get around it, but they could have a tricky few years, because it's all pinned on Messi. You can argue that for a long time it's always been pinned on Messi, but he's had people around him that have helped out, whether it's Xavi and Iniesta, or whether it's Suarez. There's always been people around it, but right now you look at it, and I mean, there's the talk of Luis Suarez being offloaded as well. They're keen to get him off the books. So if he goes as well, Griezmann's not maybe settled as well as they would have hoped. He's had an okay season, but when you're spending that sort of money on somebody, you want them to fit in a bit quicker and have a better season. So it's probably more on Messi than it's ever been right now for Barca. And I mean, Ansu Fati is coming through, 17, who's looked really, really good. I think he managed to get 30 something games this season. But there's there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and Barca don't have that much money. That's what we keep hearing about. How Barca haven't got the money to spend. These stories of Cristiano Ronaldo being offered to Barcelona to get his 20 odd million wages off the books at Juve, and it's like, great, but even if they wanted him, they couldn't get him right now. Barca have got no money, or they're going to be shrewd with their business. Rakitic looks to be off as well. Vidal looks like he probably will go this summer. Suarez maybe. So you're left with an aging squad, and you're left with no money to really rebuild it to get the rebuild work done that needs to be done.
It's a fascinating topic. I feel like one that we will delve into again in the future. Yeah. But let us know your thoughts on the rise of Man City, PSG, and RB Leipzig in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to What Culture Football, wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily football podcasts. You can also continue the conversation on Twitter at WhatCultureFC. And whilst you're there, follow both of us. You can follow Andrew Pollard at
Cultured Left Peg.
You can follow me at Adam Wilbourn, follow our lovely editor at It's Adam Nicholas, and as I said, follow us all at WhatCultureFC. But this has been It's All Kicking Off. My thanks to Andrew Pollard. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.